Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristen Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patty Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Friends and Fiction Show. I'm Mary Kay Andrews, coming to you live and direct from the Mahjong room at the Tybee Island Public Library.
As one does. I am Kristy Woodson Harvey, and I'm just coming to you from my regular old office like normal.
And this is Friends and Fiction. We are 4 New York Times bestselling authors who gather every week. We pull back the curtain on the writing life and talk about the books you'll cancel your plans to read. Cancel your plans so that you can read.
That's exactly right. In addition to this web show, we have a Facebook group of more than 330,000 very active members, a YouTube channel, a podcast, an Instagram feed, a separate book club, and a killer newsletter on Substack. We are a book community like no other.
We love the story behind the story and talking about the moment when a book grabs you and will not let go. And we're here for that tonight, just like we have been every single Wednesday night for the past 6 years to do just that.
You can find out more about us and all we have to offer at friendsandfiction.com.
Tonight, I'm so excited because we are going to go behind the pages of the new novel, The Keeper, with best-selling author Tana French. But before we talk about the novel, we want to talk about the writer who wrote the novel. Tana French is the New York Times bestselling author of several novels, including The Searcher, The Likeness, and The Witch Elm. Her novels have sold over 3 million copies and won numerous awards, including the Edgar, Anthony Macavity, and Barry Awards, the LA Times Book Prize for Best Mystery Thriller, and the Irish Book Award for Crime Fiction.
Tana lives in Dublin with her family. Her new novel, The Keeper, was just released on March 31st and is the 3rd and final book in the million-copy-bestselling Cal Hooper trilogy.
Sean, can you bring Tana on? Tana, welcome to Friends and Fiction. We are so excited to talk to you. I think we have to start from the beginning. For those of you who are new to this woman's amazing work, The Keeper is the 3rd in the series after The Searcher and The Hunter. Now, Tana, your protagonist, Cal Hooper, is an expat former homicide detective who's left the mean streets of Chicago for what he thinks will be a quiet existence in a village in Ireland. What was the inspiration for Cal?
I had suddenly discovered Westerns, which I'd never read before. And then someone whose taste I trust told me about Lonesome Dove, and I read it and went, this is amazing. And I ended up reading True Grit and The Sisters Brothers and stuff, and really starting to like Westerns and thinking a lot about how they're an interesting match with the West of Ireland. You've got kind of a lot of things that map really well. You've got, this kind of harsh terrain that demands real mental and physical toughness from anyone who wants to make a living out of it. And you've got this sense of people who are so far removed, like both culturally and geographically, from the power centers, that they feel like the people in power don't know anything about their lives. And if they want a functioning society, they're going to have to set up their own rules, and enforce them themselves. So I thought, what about a Western that was set in the west of Ireland? And one of the tropes that you've got in Westerns is, of course, the stranger who blows into town. He shows up in the saloon and he's got a past and some secrets of his own. And he's going to end up changing the place. Whether he wants to or not, he'll act as a catalyst for change. So I thought, what about somebody who didn't want to be a detective anymore, who was moving away from that, and he shows up in this small town in Ireland, and things change around him? And that's where Cal came out of.
That's great. Talk to us, if you would, a little bit about what this particular book is about, The Keeper. If you would, I don't know, maybe tell us a little bit about the plot.
It's the third in the series. So Cal has put down roots basically in this small town, Ardnakelty in the west. He's got a fiancée, Lena. The two of them are kind of raising this half-year-old teenager, Trey, who back in the Searchers showed up in Cal's garden. And things feel pretty stable. But then a young woman is found drowned in the river. And it's not clear whether this is suicide or accident or what. But Cal feels like because it's causing trouble within the townland, because she was going out with the son of the local big shots and the townland starts to split around its loyalties, Cal feels like he's got a responsibility to find out when he's asked what happened. And Lena wants nothing to do with this. She wants him to have nothing to do with all these sort of tangles and things that go on in Ardnakelty. So the relationship is put under threat as well. And then what they start to realize is that this is part of something that threatens the entire townland. And it's, I guess, a book about what it means to be an insider somewhere, what you owe to the community that's taken you in, and what sacrifices you have to make, and what it offers in exchange.
I love that. What you owe to the community that's taken you in. That's an incredible quote. So speaking of the community that takes you in, reading about Ardnakelty is such an immersive, transportive experience. So we really can't even talk about these books without discussing this brooding, isolated spot, a place in Western Ireland that's not at all what American tourists might expect to find. So we know you're an expat yourself, originally from Vermont, but living for many years now in Dublin. So where did Ardnakelty come from?
I've spent a fair amount of time in the west of Ireland, and I love it. It is ridiculously beautiful. It really is. It's gorgeous. The people are great. But I'm fascinated by places like that because I'm not really from anywhere. My parents have like several different nationalities between them. I grew up all over the world, moving every few years. And so I don't actually belong anywhere. So of course, naturally, I'm fascinated by places where people do belong, where they go back generations, where like every relationship you've got isn't just based on you and the other person. It's based on the fact that your grandfathers had a fight in 1950, or that, your mother doesn't get on with their cousin because somebody pinched somebody's boyfriend decades ago. Where your relationship's so rooted, it's so within this place and so within these people. And of course, I find that like fascinating because it's so far from what I've experienced, where you're lucky. When I was growing up, you were lucky if you could have a friendship that went on for more than a few years before one of you took off to the other side of the world. So I wanted to write about that. I wanted to think more about that and delve more deeply into what it means if you're really properly rooted within a community, and also what it would mean to somebody who's what gets called around here a blow-in, which is somebody who's new in town. And down the country, a blow-in means you can be there for 50 years and still be a blow-in. But I wanted to think about that experience and what it means to be this outsider and what it means to gradually become an insider.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, the people have been in this village for generations. And the thing that came to my mind was my father's name was John Patrick Hogan. And his parents.
I knew where you're from.
Yeah. His parents were from Kerry and Armagh. My father used to say, nobody keeps a grudge like the Irish.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like the blow-in. So
Yeah.
I'm from a little town on the coast of North Carolina, and I'm not from here originally. And people who are not from here, there are all these different names, but a lot of time it's like dit daughters or they're like all these different, or people say like, oh, they're from off. They're like all these different.
Yeah, like on Tybee, we talk about being off island.
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so now, Tana, these books are such a departure from your Dublin Murder Squad books or your other standalone novels. And I want to go back to something that you'd said earlier. When The Searcher was released, you described the book as mystery software running on Western hardware, which I loved. Now, Cal Hooper is tight-jawed and taciturn. He seems to me like such a throwback to the John Wayne character in the movie The Searchers, or maybe even Gary Cooper and Shane. If you would talk to us a little bit about, again, a little bit more about adopting those Western tropes for your fiction.
That Cal being kind of that man of action type thing, I think was in some ways a reaction against having just written The Witch Elm. Because The Witch Elm is a really introspective book. Like, the main center of the action is within the narrator's head. He's got a traumatic brain injury. He's struggling through that and the discovery that his past may not have been what he thought it was. And so it's all really, really introspective and really about him and his mental processes. And that was a lot of fun to write right up until like the last 2 weeks, where I suddenly went, oh my God, stop navel gazing and get a life. I'm just got really sick of the introspection. So I wanted to write somebody who was the opposite, somebody who thought in terms of action rather than of thought and feeling. And I also liked the way that the Western genre explores morality, because it's very action-based there as well. The Western's very matter-of-fact about the fact that there isn't always good and evil. Sometimes good people do bad things, bad people do good things. Sometimes nobody here is really a good guy, and sometimes there is really no good solution. So what defines you is your actions, not sort of what you think and what you're, discussing within your head. It's what you do. Do you do your best to be moral in an immoral or amoral world? And I like that idea of Cal being somebody who is very firm that what you think isn't the point. What you feel isn't the point. It is your actions that count. And that's why it's a third-person book when all the rest had been first person, because it felt like, to him, to the narrator, what's inside his head, that doesn't matter. It's what does he do when push comes to shove? What action does he take? So that's why I was writing it from kind of at his shoulder rather than within his head.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating that his cronies keep urging him, do something, stop talking about it, and do something. And this idea that they want, what we would call frontier justice. They are ready to serve up some frontier justice. But I want to talk about, we touched on earlier, these incredible characters you've created. Trey, the feral teenager who turns up on Cal's doorstep in the first book. And Lena, a widow who's trying desperately to detach herself from this place where she was born and raised. I would love it if you would talk a little bit about the evolution of these characters.
Yeah, they were all so much fun to write, I have to say. And in The Searcher, Lena in particular didn't really get as much space as the other two. But she, over the course of the 3 books, she kind of developed and became more important. And her arc got more interesting to me because she is from here. She's from Ardnakelty, generations back. She is the opposite of a blow-in. But she spent her life distancing herself from this place because it is somewhere that tries to get right inside your skin and tangle itself in every single aspect of your life. And that's one of the things I really kind of found out from reading everything I could about rural Irish life, but talking to everyone I could, like listening to every story I could get from people who've grown up that way, was that it can be quite suffocating isn't the word I'm looking for, but it can get really all up inside you. And I thought of her as somebody who wanted to keep up her barricades, who did not want to be an insider. But when it comes to this book, she's hit the point where she can't claim to be an outsider anymore. She can't keep the barricades up. She has to recognize that whether she likes it or not, she lives here. She's from here. And she has to learn how to do that. So that was what was fun about writing Lena and letting her evolve, was realizing that this was a big and complicated struggle, and one that she wasn't going to be able to keep up forever. She was going to have to move forward in one way or another.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the guys.
Hey, the guys.
They are this aging, quintet of locals who take up a corner of the pub, Sean Oaks, and they sort of, I don't know, to me, they sort of act as a Greek chorus, or as they put it themselves, a war council when trouble comes to Ardnakelty. Where did the guys come from? And I have to say, they remind me of those rooks that are perching.
Lovely.
that are perching in that oak tree outside Cal's house.
Oh, I really like that. I wish I had thought of that. Thank you. You know what? Every pub has these guys, especially pubs down the country. They're the guys, they don't quite have their names on their own seats, but you better not sit there because these are theirs and have been theirs since before you were born. And they've got a relationship that's so closely interwoven. They know each other so well. And in Ireland, anyway, they slag the holy bejesus out of each other. Like all they ever do is mess with each other's heads, give each other a hassle, and support each other in ways that aren't immediately obvious. And I like the idea of a group like that, that's so tight-knit and cares about each other without ever, God forbid, saying any such thing. And Cal somehow finding his place within this group. And then what would happen if they had demands to make of him? Because you can't get halfway in a place like this. You can't just be there and then pretend that that doesn't make demands. So what happens when these guys who are basically messing and slagging him and giving him a hassle over his engagement, and what happens when something gets real and he's needed, not just for who he is as an individual, but for the fact that he used to be a detective and he thinks differently.
Well, it's really funny as I'm sort of listening to you talk. So I have a series called the Peachtree Bluff series that is very different surfacely from your book, but they have so many things in common. They're but these small towns and who belongs and who doesn't and who's kind of running things from the corner booth, and it's really interesting. But when I set out to write, I'm going somewhere with this. So when I set out to write that series, I envisioned it as a trilogy from the beginning, and then wrote a fourth book and now have a fifth one coming. But
Yes.
I'm wondering though, when you started this series, did you always know it was going to be a series, or did it evolve along the way?
Oh God, no, this was a standalone. The Searcher was meant to be a standalone.
was?
Yeah. I had
Okay.
no plans for another one. But then I finished it up, started thinking about a new one, and went, kind of, there's more candy in the piñata. There was more that needed to come out because I'd left them at such a fragile point, these characters. The relationships had just been established. They hadn't solidified yet. And I wanted to see what would happen if something kind of destabilized them. And also I thought there were so many more Western tropes that would be interesting in this context. Then I finished The Hunter and I went, wait a minute. I've got one book which is about being an outsider in a small town. I've got another book that's about being in this sort of liminal space between outsider and insider. I kind of need to finish off that arc with a book about what it means to be an insider here. And I was also thinking about that Western mystery intersection. Like a load of Western series have a book about the death of the West and what that means. And that resonates in modern Ireland kind of more than I'd like, because this rural way of life is under a lot of threat. Like farmers are finding it harder and harder to keep going. You've got young people emigrating because they can't find housing. You got schools closing because there aren't enough kids, and like mega farms coming in and buying up all the land so that individual farmers can't compete. And I went, this idea of the death of the West is one that resonates, and I think that needs confronting.
Okay, that's really interesting to me, because I would have guessed that you knew from the beginning this was going to be a trilogy.
No, I had no idea.
Well, okay, well, so I'm interested in the meaning of these titles. So The Searcher, The Hunter, and now The Keeper. So who or what to you is the keeper in this story?
I spent a long time looking for the right word there, because I knew it was something like the guardian, or something like that. Someone who keeps watch over a place, or who, I couldn't figure out what it was. It took me a long time to figure out. And I kind of think of it as a position almost that transfers over the course of the book.
Okay.
From probably Mart at the beginning almost to Cal at the end, where he takes on that role of somebody who is trying to look after the townland's interests, or trying to keep the gates against whatever threats or wolves or invaders are out there. Something like that. I thought of it as a title that didn't quite belong to anyone at the beginning necessarily, but that has landed on Cal's shoulders by the end.
Yeah, I think by the end of the book, you really sort of get a sense of that. We talked about the Western tropes, but I think in The Keeper, you've got this larger than life local big shot, Tommy Moynihan, whose land grab threatens to drastically change, maybe destroy this town. And Tommy's son, his anointed one, is engaged to a lovely young woman who everybody loves, and then things get tragic. Am I wrong in thinking that Tommy is the Irish equivalent of the Godfather?
Quite possibly, only there's less blood and gore in the Irish version. There are a lot of Tommies all over Ireland because Ireland's got a really weird relationship with authority. I'm blaming it on like 700 years of colonization by the British because people got really used to the idea that you want to get around authority. You can't openly defy it, but you want to find ways around it. And so you end up with these kind of para-authorities in small towns who they're sort of celebrated and admired for finding ways around the rules and regulations. Like, they're slipping bribes here, or they're getting somebody to override planning regulations there. But that's considered almost something to be respected and admired because we've got this ingrained idea that getting around authority is a good thing. But at the same time, you've got this ingrained reluctance to challenge authority openly ever, which is, a natural result of 700 years of bad things happening if you did. So nobody will challenge this guy. And he's in this odd position where he's presenting himself as a man of the people, rebelling against the authorities, sticking it to the man. And yet he is an authority who can't be challenged within his own small world. And yet I suppose it does have that slightly Godfather overtone where he's created a para-authority, a circle of his own that's outside the circle of legit authority.
I love that. That's really cool. That's a good question, Mary Kay.
Yeah.
I kept seeing the scene in Godfather, the Diane Keaton wedding scene where she's in the car and everything's happy and beautiful, and then things go really wrong. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's my interpretation. Okay, Tana, if you'll stick around, don't go anywhere. We want to have more questions for you, but first, a few quick reminders for our listeners and viewers out there.
So for all of you watching and listening, we encourage you to rush out and buy your copies of The Keeper. The perfect place to do that is on the Friends and Fiction bookshop, the Friends and Fiction shop on bookshop.org. You'll not only be getting it at a discount, but all your purchases there support our show, our guests, and indie bookstores nationwide.
And also, don't forget to subscribe to our Substack newsletter. In the newsletter, there we really think we have some incredible content. You're not going to want to miss our recent interviews with Lisa Patton about Kissing the Sky, Amy Jo Burns with the Jenna pick, Wait for Me, Cynthia Dupree Sweeney with her newest, Lake Effect, and Kristy's chat with Grant Grinder about his new novel, So Young, So Old, So Old, So Young. And Kristen just did an incredible 10-author roundtable for Women's History Month, all about historical fiction with a giveaway, which we just announced. Yep.
Okay, so Tana, we know your fans are wondering, including these two on the screen, with the end of the Cal Hooper series, do we know what's next? Any hints? Another Dublin Murder Squad, a standalone? Anything you can tell us?
Yeah, it's a standalone, and this one is kind of a little bit different from anything I've done before, which is, so that's how I roll. That's how I like to, that's how I like to work. I'm not comfortable if I'm in my comfort zone, basically.
Yeah.
Once I start feeling like I have any clue how to do something, I get twitchy and I start worrying that I'm going to end up writing the same book over and over again. So I just get this urge to go off and do something completely different where I have no idea what I'm doing. So this one's a little bit different. It's set during the first COVID lockdown in Ireland, which lasted like about 7 weeks. And if you notice in the Ardna Kelty books, there's no COVID. I ignored it completely, even though I wrote it over the course of like COVID times. I was just going, no, I cannot even let this thing into my village. People kept going, hey, are you going to write about this? This would be great material for a writer. I was like, I don't even want to do it. Never mind write about it. So far, I've ignored COVID entirely, but I am making up for it now. And in this one, just as the lockdown hits Ireland, a woman and her 2 kids move to this kind of small, tight-knit road in a suburb somewhere in Ireland. And as the lockdown continues, the neighbors gradually realize that she may not be who she says she is, and she may be here, she may have come here for a very specific reason, and that starts to have ramifications for everybody on the road. And that's kind of as far as I've got.
It sounds so good.
I
I don't know
can't
what's
wait
going to happen.
I cannot wait. And also, we can't talk about this series without talking about the incredible narrator. Tell us about your narrator for these books, because, I listen to the audio of The Keeper, and I'm calling everybody I meet a fickin' Egypt.
Yes. The slang will spread. The Irish slang will spread. No, he's amazing. Roger is just wonderful. And it was an odd one because 2 people at once suggested him as the perfect person. I was talking to a couple of friends of mine who were actors who had worked over in America, and I was going, listen, do you guys know this is the kind of narrator I need? And it's difficult because he's going to have to do all these things, and he's going to have to be tuned into both an American voice and an Irish mentality, and he's going to have to be able to do Irish accents properly and sound like he's in a Western but sound like he's in a mystery. I know this is impossible. Do you know anybody? And they went, actually, yes, we do. And sent me Roger's name on the same day that the audio department over at Viking went, we think we know who should be doing these books. And I listened to the sample, and it was perfect. It was an instant click. I was going, oh God, please let him be free for this. And he's been free for all 3 of them. And I so appreciate it because he brings the place alive. He really does.
And tell us his full name besides just Roger.
Oh, sorry. This is Roger Clark, and he is great.
He is. He really is. Okay. One more thing before we let you go. Where else can readers catch up with you? Are you going to tour, and will you tell our community how to connect with you online?
I'm not touring anywhere. I'm kind of staying put. I'm doing the odd interview here and there. There's a Barnes & Noble event on the 31st. But apart from that, I don't do very much. Do you know what it is? I'm really easily distracted. So if I go off and tour or something, I will get so distracted from the book I'm supposed to be writing that God knows when I'll get my head back into it. So I'm not good at that. So I'm doing a handful of interviews along the way and that event of Barnes & Noble. But yeah, that's not a lot. Sorry.
Well, we got to see you here today, so that was fantastic.
Well, you guys are great. And you let me give a shout out to how much I love indie bookstores as well, and give a thank you to them. So.
Definitely. And how do people, can they connect with you online?
I'm not on any social media. No, there's the publishers have on Facebook just a page that gives any updates or anything like that. But again, I get sucked into social media. I'm never coming out. I'll never get another book written.
I love that.
Well, anyway, thank you so much for joining us. We really are flattered that you let yourself get distracted by us.
Oh, you guys are wonderful. And I really appreciate you having me back on. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was our pleasure. Thank you for being with us for Friends in Fiction.
So everyone out there, be sure to tune in next week when Ron and Patty will welcome Lynn Cullen to discuss her new novel, When We Were Brilliant, and Priya Parmar to discuss her new novel, The Original. That show will air on the Friends in Fiction Facebook page and YouTube channel on Wednesday, April 22nd at 7 p.m. Eastern, and it will be published to our podcast for your listening pleasure on Friday, April 24th.
Thanks all of you out there for being with us. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Thanks for tuning in to Friends and Fiction, hosted by New York Times bestselling authors Mary Kay Andrews, Patty Callahan-Henry, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Kristen Harmel. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, subscribe to our Substack newsletter, and catch us on Facebook and YouTube, where a new episode of our show airs every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can also listen to Friends in Fiction wherever you get your podcasts. Find out about all this and more at friendsandfiction.com. We're so glad you're here.